Chapter 52 on Introduction to in the Biosphere. Okay, ecology encompasses many areas. So the definition is the scientific study of the interactions between organisms and the environment. And these interactions determine how the organisms are distributed and their number or abundance. So ecology is the study of the interactions between these organisms and their environment. And this is a picture of a Panamanian tropical forest, richness in biosphere, a lot of plants, and this is a type of beetle, rhinoceros beetle. The environment of any organism includes abiotic and biotic. The definition of abiotic is non-living components such as temperature, water, and wind, or the weather. Biotic is living components such as competition and predation. So all the organisms that are part of the individual's environment are typically called the biota. This chart shows a distribution of organisms of kangaroos, and this is a distribution diagram, and you can see greater than 20 kangaroos per square kilometer down here, and then going out with lessening and lessening amounts, and this is the limits of distribution in the interior of Australia. Okay, there are subfields of ecology. Organismal ecology studies how an organism's structure, physiology, and for animals, the animal behavior meets environmental challenges. So here is a humpback whale and its calf, and how did the humpback whale select their calving areas? So this is a question for organismal ecology. Population ecology focuses on factors affecting how many individuals of a species live in an area. So, what environmental factors would affect the reproductive rate of the deer mice here? So this is population ecology, analyzes factors that affect the population size. Community ecology, a group of populations of different species in an area. So there are lots of plants here. Community ecology examines how interactions between species, such as predation, competition, affect community structure and organization. So what factors influence the diversity of species that make up a particular forest, such as forest? Ecosystem ecology is the community of organisms in an area and the physical factors with which those organisms interact. So this emphasizes energy flow and chemical cycling between organisms in the environment. So what factors control photosynthetic productivity in this temperate grassland ecosystem? Landscape ecology deals with the related arrays of ecosystems. So it's a mosaic of connected ecosystems, or seascape, landscape or seascape. So research in landscape ecology focuses on the factors controlling exchanges of energy, materials, and organisms across multiple ecosystems. To what extent do the trees lining a river serve as corridors of dispersal for animals? Ecology. The biosphere is our whole global ecosystem, the sum of all the ecosystems on our planet. So from the broadest area, including Earth and its atmosphere, down to the deepest parts, the benthic layer of the ocean. This is a picture of Rachel Carson. She wrote Silent Spring. Ecology provides a scientific understanding underlying environmental issues. So Rachel Carson is credited with starting the modern environmental movement, and she published this book in 1962. Her message, the control of nature, is a phrase conceived in arrogance, born of the Neanderthal age of biology and philosophy, when it was supposed that nature exist for the convenience of man. Phrase. Okay, interactions between organisms and the environment limit the distribution of species. So these are biogeographic realms. Continental drift and barriers such as mountains and deserts contribute to distinctive flora, which are plants, and fauna, which are animals. Rims not strictly delineated but grayed together where species from adjacent rims coexist. So look at this: Neotropical, Ethiopian, Oriental, Paleoarctic, Neoarctic, Australian. So where the latitude lines of the equator go across, you can see there is some phasing here from one biogeographic realm, and here as well. Okay, this flow chart of factors limiting geographic distribution with a yes or no answer. So ecologists consider a series of questions when studying factors that limit a species distribution. So they often consider a series of questions like the ones shown here. So a species is absent. So why is it absent? Dispersal limits distribution. Yes, area inaccessible or insufficient time. No. Well then, let's look at behavior. Do behavior limits distribution? Yes. Habitat selection. No. Well then it must be something else, such as biotic factors. Other species, do they limit distribution? If they do, then it's predation, parasitism, competition, and disease. No. Abiotic factors limit distribution, such as weather. So yes, water, oxygen, salinity, pH, soil, nutrients. These are chemical factors. Physical factors: temperature, light, soil structure, fire, and more. Dispersal and distribution. So the definition of dispersal is the movement of individuals of organisms away from the centers of high population density or from their area of origin. So from high to low population, they are being dispersed. So dispersal contributes to global distribution of organisms. The natural range expansions show the influence of dispersal on distribution. So this is the spread of great-tailed grackle, the breeding populations from 1974 to 1996. So you can see 1974, the red areas, new areas occupied the pale yellow areas. So they expanded quite a bit in almost an 18-year, 22 time span. What are species transplants? They are organisms that are intentionally or accidentally relocated from their original distribution. So species transplants can disrupt communities or ecosystems in which they have been introduced. They can interfere with the native species. An example would be to introduce game animals or sports fish intentionally, or to plant a non-native plant like kudzu intentionally makes the native ecosystem. Behavior and habitat selection. Some organisms do not occupy all of their potential range. It may be limited, this distribution, by habitat selection behavior, such as biotic or living factors or abiotic living factors. So let's look at some biotic factors that affect the distribution of organisms. They can include interaction with other species, predation, and competition. So here we're looking at seaweed cover to see how limpets and urchins control the seaweed cover. So removing limpets and urchins increase seaweed cover here, the purple line. Almost no seaweed grew where both urchins and sea limpets were present, down here. Sea urchins have a much greater effect, only these are removed, than limpets down here, in limiting seaweed growth. So here, the culprit that limited seaweed growth were the sea urchins, a biotic factor of competition. Abiotic factors that affect distribution: temperature, water, sun, rocks, and soil. So environmental temperature is an important factor in distribution of organisms because how it affects biological processes. If water freezes, cells that contain water may rupture. Proteins of most cells denature at high temperatures. Water availability in habitats is another important factor. Freshwater versus saltwater. Terrestrial organisms face a constant threat of desiccation, of not getting enough water, of drying out. Their organisms have adapted to this. Sunlight, light intensity, and quality affects photosynthesis. Light is also important to development and behavior of organisms sensitive to photoperiod. Like back in the plant section when we talked to long photoperiod, short photoperiod in plants. So photoperiod is a more reliable indicator than temperature for cueing seasonal events. The length of day, length of night period. Wind amplifies effective temperature by increasing heat loss by evaporation and convection, so cooling down the surface more quickly. Wind can also change morphology or the shape of plants by inhibiting growth of plants on the windward side, as shown here. Obviously, the wind is coming from this direction. So also I want to add that organisms living at high elevations are exposed to high levels of ultraviolet radiation, which also affect them. And showing here strong winds, also freezing temperatures at high elevations, which increase water loss and inhibit the growth of limbs outside of trees. Rocks and soil. So many characteristics of soil limit distribution of plants and the animals that feed upon them. So the physical structure of the soil, whether it's fine like sand, clay with a lot of degraded feldspar, or if it's very rocky. The pH, how acidic, how alkaline it is. If there's a lot of acidic plants like azaleas, pine trees, this will make the soil more acidic. More alkaline is further north. So traditionally in the southern United States, the soil is more acidic. And also mineral composition that is in soil. Climate. 4 major abiotic components of climate are temperature, water, sunlight, and wind. And climate is the prevailing weather in an area. So the macroclimate consists of patterns on the global, regional, and local level. Microclimate, in contrast, is very fine patterns, such as those encountered by a community of organisms underneath a fallen log. A very different microclimate under the log than around the log. Or in a bigger sense, the microclimate of the temperature within a city in the summertime versus the surrounding countryside. The city is much warmer because of increased irradiation. Global climate patterns, tilt of the Earth's axis. So the global climate patterns are determined largely by solar energy and the planet's movement in space. So sunlight intensity plays a major part in determining the Earth's climate patterns. So we are tilted, and so sometimes we are away from the sun in the winter and fall, towards the sun, spring, summer. So just looking at the sun hitting the Earth, low angle of sunlight here in this northern and southern latitudes, sunlight directly overhead here at equinoxes. Okay, so at the equator, the days are always equal.